Okay, the second part today, we're going to shift now to the West Coast, and we're going to look at the recent issue with, some of an ongoing issue with hot GFS temperatures in the interior California valleys. I was pretty shocked a couple of weeks ago that I used Twitter as the basis for a presentation, and I'm going right back to the well here next presentation. Again, it was the Twitterland provided the highlights for this. I will note that we're not going to have a lot of solid answers on this, but it's certainly raising a lot of questions. And this was the tweet in question. I've removed some of the commentary from the person who issued it, but you can kind of get the gist that he wasn't too pleased with the GFS 2-meter temperature forecast here in interior California, with good reason. You can see some values predicted here at the day 3 range into the mid-120s. And this is associated with the ongoing heat wave in the West. It's much publicized, a very strong ridge out there on the West Coast with very hot weather impacting a lot of the big cities there. And we go right here to the evolution of the 2-meter temperatures. I have NAM top, GFS bottom, and then differences on the right. You'll see a lot of differences along the shoreline, which are probably due to the interpolations to the output grids. I wouldn't worry about those. Offshore, we're seeing the GFS has the new NSST version, which has diurnal warming and nighttime cooling. There's some basic state differences. We are mostly focused on the interior. So this is, we're looking at the 18Z cycle on July 29th. That's valid on the afternoon of August 1. So we're still in the morning here, and we'll watch the progression in the interior valleys here of California. Things start to heat up pretty quickly in the GFS and the NAM as well, but not quite as fast. Now we're getting into the peak time of the day. GFS running a few degrees warmer, actually as much as 8 or 10 Fahrenheit here in the interior valleys. Then at 0Z, again, we're about 8 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit warmer here in the GFS, predicting values exceeding 120. Then after dark, it's pretty slow to cool down in that area. The GFS actually cools down the areas around the valley here in Northern California and over the higher terrain quite a bit more. It stays warmer a lot longer in Southeast California, Southwest Arizona. And now to 60, again, the big story here is that it's after dark and the GFS is still keeping 2-meter temperatures into the 100s down here along the California-Arizona border. So the verification here at 21Z, color-coded on the right, you can see both the NAM and the GFS at this time. We're running a bit warm here in the interior valleys. And then 0Z, again, we have some values into the low 100 teens, not the mid-100 teens the NAM shows, and certainly not the lower 120s at this time shown in the GFS. So the first question is, how hot was the GFS showing? And I just showed 3 hourly plots. If we go to the buffer data here from that cycle, you can see the GFS was predicting a max of 124.5 at Redding, California, which is a site right there in the middle of the area of interest. The NAM's warmest temperature there was 115.7. Here's the obs at Redding. And you'll notice they heated up. They hit their maximum around 23Z. The GFS actually had its max of 21Z, and NAM was a little bit better there, showing the max around 22, 23Z. But they both heated up too quickly through the midday hours, and then again, the max is about 112, so the NAM's running almost 4 degrees Fahrenheit too high, GFS running about over 12 degrees too high. Now, we should note that there was smoke reported at weddings throughout the day. It's been a big issue in the West, and that probably kept temperatures down at least a few degrees. But I think even without smoke, we certainly were not going to see 124 at Reading. So the second question, this cycle was the one that got all the attention on Twitter. Was this a one-cycle aberration, or was there something that's systematic going on? And what I've done is I've plotted all the GFS cycles for 5 days leading up to the event, and you'll see I pulled out what the max temperature per the buffer data for Reading was. And you'll see starting with the 12Z cycle on the 28th, just about every cycle leading right up to the time in question was exceeding 120 degrees in the GFS forecast. So it was not one cycle, a lot of cycles. Again, even right up to when the event was just about to start, still predicting values over 120. Next question, how does moss react? And I picked, we don't have 18Z moss, but the 12Z moss on the 28th, when we had that 124 value. The GFS moss, the highest value it was predicting was 114. The next day we actually saw a 118 predicted there. Then the bottom line is the moss values still look pretty high there, but they're well below the 2-meter values as we would hope and expect. Now we'll look at the skin temperatures and the skin temperature evolution. Again, NAM top, GFS bottom, and then the differences on the right. So this is 18Z. And you'll notice the differences due to the NSST off the coast, where the GFS will be running warmer as we heat in the afternoon. Now we're 21Z, and you can see some pretty healthy skin temperatures here in that area of the interior California valleys. The maximum here in the GFS is exceeding 145 Fahrenheit. The NAM is more in the 130 to 135 range. You'll note huge differences in the skin temperature over Nevada and Southeast California and Arizona, where the GFS skin temperatures are noticeably higher than the NAM. They're actually reasonably close through this valley area. In fact, in some areas, the NAM actually has a warmer skin temperature, where we saw all those hot 2-meter temperatures. But again, big differences down in this region. Some of the GFS skin temperatures exceeding 150. Now here's 0Z, and again, the GFS has a notable max in skin temperature, around 135 or so here in north central California. The NAM is actually a little bit warmer north of there. And again, noticeable GFS with noticeably larger skin temperatures across most of Nevada, Southeast California, and western Arizona. And just to continue here at 3Z, in the night, again, during the cooling period, the GFS skin temperatures are again noticeably warmer as we go into the night in this region, and they actually stay quite a bit warmer here in the interior California valleys as well, with the NAM having warmer skin temperatures in extreme northern California. So this is a plot from Corey Goscini showing a zoom of the new GFS land type classification here, and I have the types listed on the next page. There's a lot of savannas and woody savannas as the vegetation type here in this region, with cropland to the south of this. Kind of right here in this, like around the. Certainly, this is some of the primary area where we're seeing the differences here, where we have these vegetation types. Here's the larger map, and again, if you look at the purple, which is that the woody savanna, and the regular savanna here in this green, there's not a whole lot of them except here in California. There's some purple down here in East Texas, western Louisiana, southeast Mississippi, northern Florida, southeast Georgia. But overall, this vegetation type is a bit unique to that area. I don't know if that has any play here to what we're seeing happening, but just noting here the new land surface classification, which was put in with the new model a few weeks ago. I plotted here the surface exchange coefficient for the NAM and the GFS, and you'll see that for the most part the GFS has a considerably higher surface exchange coefficient here in California, much lower elsewhere, although there's an interesting minimum right here in the California valleys. And what's interesting is, if you look at the GFS skin temperatures corresponding to that time, there's almost, it's hard to see exactly if they align, but it looks like they're pretty close between the local minimum in surface exchange coefficient and local maximum in skin temperatures. I'm not sure if there's anything to that. It's even hard to tell if they perfectly align, but that caught my eye a little bit. If we go on to 0Z, kind of the same idea here. While the surface exchange coefficient in a lot of Northern California is higher in the GFS, there is still a bit of a localized minimum here in valleys where the NAM and GFS values aren't that different, which really stood out. And again, if you compare here to look at the skin temperatures, the localized min in GFS surface exchange coefficient seems pretty close to where the maximum in GFS skin temperature is. And again, I don't know if that's coincidence or again if it's a perfect match there, but it did catch my eye. This is the 6-hour average sensible heat flux between the NAM and the GFS. The GFS has a higher average sensible heat flux in that region compared to the NAM. We look at forecast soundings now for Redding, California, and we'll look at 3 hours worth the same 18Z cycle on the 29th. So we look at valid 22, 23, and 0Z on the afternoon of the 1st. And I've plotted here the first level temperature in Fahrenheit, the skin temperature, and 2-meter temperature. So valid at 22Z, the NAM first level, GFS first level temperatures. GFS is a couple degrees warmer. The skin temperatures are pretty close. The GFS 2-meter temperature is noticeably hotter than that of the NAM. 23Z. Now you can see they've both heated up just a little bit here in the lowest level. The GFS getting up about 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit warmer at the first level. Skin temperatures, the NAM actually has a higher skin temperature at this point, but the GFS 2-meter temperature is noticeably warmer than that of the NAM. And now at 0Z, what's interesting is if you go here between 23 and 0Z, the GFS lowest level actually continues to heat between 23 and 0Z, when the NAM first level temperature is starting to stabilize or at least starting to slightly drop off. The GFS first level temperature has actually gone up a little bit, for about 3 degrees Fahrenheit warmer in the GFS. Skin temperatures exactly the same. GFS 2-meter temperature still several degrees higher than that of the NAM.
What's the approximate altitude in the NAM first level?
Between 10 and 20 meters or so.
And GFS is somewhat higher, so when we interpolate it to the 2-meter temperature diagonal object, GFS will 2-meter temperature will closer to skin temperature compared to the NAM.
Not necessarily apples and oranges.
Fair enough. Although we're trying to do the reduction, we're still trying to see how much temperature's brought down. That's something I'll add in here. I'll get the heights of the first levels at both sites, and we'll add that in to the final version of the talk.
But I mean, is it that much different between the NAM and the GFS because there's several degrees, like 2-meter temperature in the GFS is several degrees closer to skin temperature than the NAM is.
Right, although at 0Z, I think the best time to look at is probably 22 or 23Z, which is the highest temperature of the day at Redding.
That's like 8
Yeah, again, it's always a question of, you've got the first level temperature, the skin temperature, how much where in between do you fall?
That's 8 degrees warmer than GFS.
Yeah.
and the skin and first level.
This is probably coming from surface layer distances more than the height of the first layer.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Matt. We have a few diagnostics we'll take a look at, and then we'll open it up for discussion. First thing, though, question we've been kind of tossing around here, is this problem worse in the 2017 GFS than in the 2016 GFS? And my next slide is from Tracy, and as part of the GFS evaluation for this last package, she looked at mean 2-meter temperature errors between the old and new versions of the GFS. So this would have been the quote, old version, this is the new one. And your eyes are certainly drawn here to California. Now, these are very large, the largest errors here on the map, and there are 1 errors, are in California. They're a little bit shifted to the east, but we think that's probably a result of the 1-degree grid that was used. It seems like there's a pretty reasonable chance here that this is capturing this phenomena and that it is likely, although it is odd that the value down here is right on the coastline. So we don't have full confidence in this, but there's some suggestion here that this is an ongoing, has been a problem before. That said,
Yeah, I was going to say that's forecast minus analysis.
that is true, and that is, and the GFS,
Question how much of the analysis is.
and given the GFS not assimilating surface data, its analyses of 2-meter values are always a little suspect. We'll go through some more evidence here. This is from the retrospective runs, getting ready for the new version. These are 72-hour forecasts valid at 0Z. Unfortunately, I had to use the northwest. The Reading area is actually falls in the northwest coast area of our verification. So the region covered is pretty diverse here, and the stats here may not be fully representative of what we're seeing at Reading. There was a slight increase in the error in this region for 2-meter temperature, and we went from a very tiny cold bias to a slight warm bias. I don't want to draw too many conclusions on this, but I'm including it as evidence. Better, we have this from Wei Zhang Zhang of the Land Surface group. He picked out a case, identified a couple of cases from 2016 when it was some of the hottest days at Reading, and he took a look at how things looked in the GFS. So what we have here, these are 2-meter temperatures. This is the old GFS. This is the new one, and this is the NAM. And with the old and new GFS were not very different at this time. Here's skin temperature, again, old and new, maybe a slightly higher skin temperatures here in the new. And then first model level, again, not too different between the versions of the GFS. NAM is a little bit cooler. So then he plotted here, this is a time series for that case for Reading. And what we have here is the observations are in black, the old GFS in red, the new in blue, and the NAM in green. And for 2-meter temperatures here, they're both running a bit warm compared to the OBS. The NAM is cool. Don't see a lot of difference between the two. Skin temperatures, not a lot of difference between the old and this one day here. The new version was a little bit higher. First model level, the NAM was cooler than both versions of the GFS, which were pretty similar. And for that case, I plotted pulled out the buffer data. These are 2-meter temperatures from that cycle, the OBS, and then the NAM and the GFS. And certainly the NAM values here were pretty close to the observed, and the NAM was a smidge cool too, but certainly no indications for this one case on one of the warmest days last summer, temperatures predicted in the 120s. Another bit of evidence, if we go back now to the current case we're looking at here from last week, If you look at these are Corey Gassini's excellent guest plumes, and all the guest members here are in gray with the mean in black, and then the operational GFS in blue for Reading. And you'll see every day here the GFS is noticeably hotter than any member of the guest. Now, given that the guest runs the old version of the GFS, it provides at least the potential argument that the new version of the GFS has made the problem worse. Although we don't want to draw a definitive conclusion on that, but it's an interesting result for sure. A couple final things here from the land surface team, and thanks to Helen Way and Rizan Zhang for helping to make a look into this case. So this is for the current case. Anything labeled here as NEMS is the current version of the GFS. So it's a time series for Reading with the OBS in black. And you'll see the 2-meter temperatures, as we saw, are noticeably hot in the GFS compared to the OBS or the NAM. Skin temperatures between the NAM and the GFS during the daytime hours are pretty close. The GFS is warmer with the skin temperatures at night. If you look at the first model level, now some of these values, these are interpolated off grid. My buffer values, some of them were a little bit different, but still they're showing the idea that the GFS did have a warmer first level temperature compared to the NAM. And these are numbers hot off the presses from Hemingway this morning. So we're comparing for that cycle. We looked at the 75-hour forecast, now 21Z at Reading for the NAM and GFS. Surface exchange coefficients at this time are actually fairly similar. The first model level, the GFS is warmer. Skin temperatures somewhat similar. 2-meter temperature noticeably warmer. Again, GFS. What's interesting is if you look at the sensible heat flux, you'd expect to see a higher sensible heat flux in the GFS compared to the NAM, but it's higher in the GFS. Similarly, the latent heat flux is higher in the GFS as well. So the GFS having a lower sensible heat flux and a higher latent heat flux relative to the NAM, but a higher 2-meter temperature value given the very similar skin temperatures is pretty odd. Again, some of his comments, and again, this was yesterday, so we'll give him a chance to amend. Yeah, sure.
I was looking at the
Sure. The wind speeds were pretty light. I haven't had a chance to add those.
I just went it quickly and thought looking for GFS. I thought maybe.
Yeah, and I do need to look at the observed winds. I know Reading during the hottest time of the day when they mixed a bit, I think they had southeast winds at like 13 knots at one point. I need to look at the model of winds. Again, Helen, if any of these, Helen, do you want me to read these, or have things changed a little bit? Okay, so go ahead and read it. So we have in the new version, the albedo is even lower, but it's closer to the truth. But that is exacerbating a high surface downward shortwave bias. So too much shortwave radiation is observed at the surface. So at one of the times, again, we have very similar skin temperatures, and the first model level temperatures aren't egregiously different, but very different 2-meter temperatures. So things are pointing to the surface layer scheme. I know Matt made that comment as well. And even if we have the same sensible heat flux, we have too large of a surface exchange coefficient, then you're not going to have enough temperature gradient between 2 meters and the surface. He uses supplies really nicely, strong surface mixing. So again, we need to figure out why is the GFS mixing things more strongly at the surface compared to the NAM. So before we get to a discussion here, again, pretty clear, very hot temperatures in the GFS in the interior Northern California valleys. There was some hints in the stats from last year that the the last version of GFS was 2.1 there too. The case that we looked at didn't give that impression, so we'll call that unclear. Skin temperatures are very similar in the region of interest. The first level temperatures in GFS are warmer. So again, why is there a smaller gradient between skin temperature and 2-meter temperature in the GFS? Overall, there was a larger surface exchange coefficient in Northern California, but not every time. So again, I think overall the reasons for the intense warming are not fully understood, and I know the Land Surface Group is still looking into this case. Off the side there, it's kind of interesting that GFS is so warm there along the California-Arizona border overnight, and there's differences with the Great Salt Lake and Lake Tahoe temperatures were interesting when they have to look further at that. I think it's also important to emphasize, and Glenn has made this point, which is fair, that the 2-meter temperature in the new GFS stats shows overall improved. This problem is very real, it's extreme, it's also very localized. And again, the overall stats show that the 2-meter temperature values in the new version are improved. But certainly what's going on in this localized region is important. We'll be able to figure that out more going forward. And I'll stop there and take comments and questions.
Excuse my ignorance, but Corey's plumes or writings show the maximum temperature of 117, whereas Ryan was showing 124. Is that some difference between the parts and the mountain data?
Interpretation has to be good.
Okay. And the mountain data is at that point.
Yeah, so go and
Ryan to Morris.
yeah.
Are you finding Tmax or you finding yeah, so Tmax value might be higher.
Okay, so Tmax
It might happen in between
the maximum temperature in the 3 hours.
Yeah. And again, the buffer data is hourly, and the buffer data makes it pretty clear. Those values in the 124, 125 range are real.
Okay. But I looked at a number of other sites. It was hard to duplicate this at nearby stations.
It is, although I think that's the only station that really falls right in that valley. I did look around a little. Matt, you get a Northern California expert here.
Something I was wondering about this is suggest GFS difference with the resolution and resolving the valley.
That's possible.
It could be simple semantic error too.
That's why I tried to be careful in making definitive claims. It certainly catches your eye that it's the old version, but there certainly could be more at play.
Not huge valley.
Notice, agreed.
So especially at end during
No doubt.
Well, diagnostic, we are looking at the GFS diagnostic. Is there anybody you know about that and how that might fit with it? Yeah, because the skin temperatures are similar, the temperatures look similar. So could there be an issue simply with the GFS diagnostic under certain situations?
I think that seems somewhat likely in terms of how it's being reduced. Unless it's just too much mixing. But does someone want to comment?
Who knows about that?
Someone want to comment on the GFS reduction?
The surface bag routine.
I think there's fluxes involved.
It is a similarity profile use the assumption under the assumption of a constant, a heat flux. But follow up with my previous comment, Glenn's question, a higher level of the first layer of the GFS, and we have to draw when we draw the curve, the similarity profile. When you draw the profile, the gradient, the near surface layer gradient will not be as sharp as a lower level compared to the NAND. So NAND can have, when we draw the profile with the lower first level, the NAND can have very sharp gradient between the surface and 2 meters. But GFS is gradient not as steep. Helene has done some experiments and just lower the GFS first layer comes to a comparable layer, Six Sigma layer to the NAND, and can drop several degrees.
So, although my question then would be, why at this one point? The Reading elevation
semi-area region when the mean temperature and but the bigger difference is between the mean temperature and the first model layer. And when we draw the profile, it's very sharp.
But there's a lot of other semi-arid areas here that didn't heat nearly that much at even higher elevations.
Yeah. So it's just one, maybe just one answer for that. And I agree with you. There's a lot of other areas. It's like Nevada or Arizona.
Right. Yeah. Now we saw that the vegetation type is somewhat unique in that area. Is there any differences in? I mean, do the different vegetation types have different surface exchange coefficients defined, or amounts? How is that going to play back in the land surface teams?
It should be the same.
But at least we use the same vegetation type. I mean, we use the same vegetation type in the GFS review.
Okay.
Different resolution can make differences.
Okay.
You can narrow down. In broad picture, the database is the same. 100 database is the same, but we regrade it to GFS resolution and the NAM resolution. The inside a particular free point that dominates classification can be different.
Okay. Is there any is the vegetation type potentially playing any role here, or probably not, in your opinion?
But the parameters, some parameters are different.
Some parameters are possible. Okay.
Also, this is, you talk about other arid regions, but are the other arid regions near records?
Well, no, we didn't see 125.
Yeah, but I mean, they are near records anyway out there.
It's hot. Again, I mean, there certainly seems to be something there. I mean, you had even you had higher skin temperatures in other regions, and you know, the 2 meter values were still, you know, very localized here.
The meteorology in the Sacramento Valley can also be somewhat unique.
Fair enough.
It's basically surrounded by mountains with only one inlet around San Francisco. Really, there's a lot of stagnation that can happen there. So the circulation patterns within the Central Valley is unique, so that you might not see the same kind of thing elsewhere.
But this is not exactly like a weather for stagnation, is it?
But I'm saying the full pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's open up to the line here. Any comments or questions on the line? Not, we'll go back to the free-for-all in the room. Can you come up with one? Thank you.
GFS parameterization scheme is quite different from the names. So, because the top is land and atmosphere interaction, so the interactions exchange is quite different. So, and also this interaction is quite largely depends on the land data, land surface data sets, and also the manifold similarity theory. So quite different.
Yes, there's a lot going on here with a lot of big complex land surface interaction for sure.
I have a little touch of J.J. Blue all over again. It sounded like 3 years ago you were talking about the same problem with the GFS in the fall, late summer fall.
In that region?
No, it's more in the east actually. The 2 meter temperature in the GFS was tend to be too close to the skin temperature.
Well, that was right. I mean, that was the issue after dark. The GFS 2 meter values would drop off quickly, and I know changes were part of this package to address that. We never saw that issue out in California. I mean, is there any chance anything in those changes could have impacted this, or given that was mostly to maintain a little bit of mixing after sunset, that really shouldn't be an issue here? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the other thing was the model going stable in the evening and then having a decoupling occur way too quickly. We're still, as a sounding show, we're still very deeply mixed. So we're throwing out anything to think of. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, and hopefully we can have some more on this.